Hey, Suave here. This vid wasn't going to happen, at least not for a long time. I anticipated that I would play at least another 30 hours before I had a concrete opinion. But it is what it is, and here I am. And I wanted to like it. I really did. The gameplay was so satisfying, despite the technical setbacks, and it looks fantastic. But there are so many things that leave me feeling so disappointed. And I don't want to just regurgitate the obvious complaints, because I believe Dragon's Dogma 2 betrays the message of what it once was by completely rewriting the Dragon's Dogma. So let's talk about that. I barely made it through the first playthrough of DD2 before immediately going back to Dark Arisen. I only started a new playthrough in an attempt to get footage of these cutscenes, but honestly, the little things that bothered me the first time were really bothering me the second time around, and I couldn't make it beyond the first act. So why is that? In the last vid, I essentially explored how the literal dogma of the dragon acts as a sort of allegory to the events in our own lives. The dragon is compelled by its dogma to push us onward into new and uncomfortable decisions that will forever affect our lives and the lives around us. The actions we take throughout the game shape who we are and who we want to become, that by the end of the game, we are so well equipped to make our final choice that we have, for lack of a better phrase, arisen beyond the dragon's dogma. Now, in the second game, we're told who we are. We're told what we must do. We are told exactly who to trust or who not to trust. We are told to run back and forth across the land, then told to do it again, and again, and again. And we're given practically everything we need to progress with minimal effort, without the satisfaction of ever discovering any of it for ourselves. In Dark Arisen, the decision to sit on the throne meant an ultimate sacrifice, being handed the fame in exchange for our beloved. It's easily one of the most selfish decisions for an Arisen to make during the confrontation with the dragon. But in DD2, we're told we're sovereign, and that we are to sit on the throne. That is the character. And yeah, the context of this story is very different. It's a reimagining, after all. It isn't a remake or a remaster. It's an original concept based on some of the assets of the first game. But completely erasing the core concept of the story just felt so wrong to me. They took away our choice. They took away our chance to choose. There's a small segment at the end of the second act, similar to the first game, where you can choose to end the game early. But it's very clear by almost railroading you to play their canonical third act of the game. And I think my biggest red flag was that we never actually meet the dragon until the final cutscene of the second act. The literal title character, the dragon of the Dragon's Dogma, is in the game for 2 scenes that total in what I think is maybe less than 10 minutes of screen time, including a forced dragon flight sequence, which is purely for exposition and not for any sort of intensity like it was in the first game's final battle. Dark Arisen opens up with an intense tutorial. You aren't even playing your character at first, as you fight your way through a tower of goblins and chimeras to find the dragon. Then, we're given an opportunity to create our Arisen. We're shown cutscenes that directly involve them, and it makes it incredibly clear what our goal should be: find the dragon. The opening of Dragon's Dogma 2, however, your character is a prisoner, almost a metaphor to being imprisoned in my living room, being tortured by this game for 30 hours. In an incredibly short, incredibly rushed, and incredibly underwhelming tutorial of picking up rocks, moving rocks, then fighting a Medusa, much like the Hydra of the first game. Only you aren't rewarded with an involved plot for scaring the thing away before the game rushes you off to another side of the map. and the story would have been fine if it were standalone, if it weren't called Dragon's Dogma. But the delivery was so forced that spending an hour creating a custom character equated to absolutely nothing, when nothing about the story made me feel like I even had a choice or impact. In Dark Arisen, the beloved plotlines are usually straightforward. They progress as a plot would. Aelinor, for example, bids you to her chamber in a plea for help from the deranged Duke, but gets caught and is sent away to a faraway keep, so you must be the knight in shining armor that goes and saves the princess. In DD2, however, Glendir is fascinated by human craftsmanship, so you need to give him a bow that he can practice with. But then he needs you to go across the map to show him how to shoot exactly one arrow. He says thanks, and then tells you he'll see you again later. So you go all the way back to the city, only for him to ask you to go all the way back to be audience in his coming-of-age trial. So you have to go all the way back across the map again, where he tells you thank you and tells you he'll see you again later. And then you go all the way back to the city again, only for him to show up at your house and ask you to walk with him all the way back across the map again. That's what I mean. That's every quest, not just this one. Too many of these quests are filled with needless travel to fill the air with magnificent gameplay, as if to hide the fact that the story is so boring. I was bored. The beauty of the game and the way it handled was the only thing that got me through that first playthrough at all, because the story wasn't compelling, and the game easily steals multiple real hours away from you in just travel alone, with such little payoff from the story. I had spent a frustratingly large amount of time running back and forth across the map to participate in the Elvish quests. Since the first game years ago, I always wondered about that pointy-eared option in the character creator, and finally we had lore to deliver on it. But like literally every single quest in this goddamn game, it's an errand and a half to get there and back to progress any of it. Glendir is sweet. I love the character. I love the elves. They're so Lord of the Rings coded that I enjoyed seeing them. But it all amounted to nothing. Even though I worked hard to make sure he was my beloved, I was only rewarded with inconsequential appearances in the confrontation with the dragon. The art direction, the cinematography of the scene, it just didn't have any impact on me, especially compared to the climax of Dark Arisen. I unfortunately couldn't will myself to play that far into the game again, but the dragon essentially pulls your beloved out of his pocket to tease you for 10 seconds, before you unceremoniously and clumsily decide if you're going to attack the dragon or sacrifice your beloved, as if that's really a choice. Instead of observing any sort of deeper meaning behind my actions, because let's be honest, they either tell you exactly why you do literally anything, or the exact opposite and explain absolutely nothing at all. I was asking why I was wasting time doing any of it. The story is preordained. They had this character in mind. It could have been anyone, so why did it have to be me? Why did I spend all that time creating a unique character when it only made me feel like a cog in the machine anyway? The dogma of this dragon is bleak. It isn't intended to challenge me, to become stronger of body or mind, to become the person I needed to be in order to survive. Because again, the choice the dragon is supposedly presenting us isn't really a choice at all. He asks if we fight him to get our heart back, or to sit upon the throne again. But we've been told from the very beginning we're supposed to be sitting on the throne. A majority of the first act is investigating the political intrigue of the new Queen Regent. So why would I have invested so much time into all of that if that wasn't the intended plot? Otherwise, I wouldn't have given two shits about becoming sovereign. It only incites greed that we would want both of those things. And that's not me. And then I realized, this is not my Arisen. This isn't my story. This isn't who I wanted to be. It sucked. It wasn't fun to watch. It wasn't fun to play. I hated the way it made me feel, because it wasn't for me. And if it's for you, then that's okay. Every story is for somebody, but this one just wasn't for me. Instead of calling it literally anything else, they decided to call it 2, implying that the first game had some sort of bearing on the second. That means that the rules of this canon were put in place in Dark Arisen, and I think that should at least be considered when playing through the second. Sure, things can be reimagined. Of course, I would have preferred if it was like a prequel somewhere in the past, during a previous cycle. But any claims that this may have been one of many infinite universes to the canon is such a cop-out response to completely rewriting everything we understood. The point of the first Dragon's Dogma was to explore our free will, challenge our freedom to choose, to question our smallest decisions and acknowledge the consequences of those actions. It is true that we can answer that the way to make the explanation useless was to suppress the work. I would perhaps have done so if I had not been convinced that he was one of those among mine who best demonstrates that I have never, in writing, sought anything other than the delicious and always new pleasure from a useless occupation. The first game opens up with this quote, telling us that there is a beauty in mundane action and how we choose to live, no matter what we choose to do. That regardless of how useless something seems, there's some merit to its existence. The only real way to make the occupation useless is to suppress it entirely. But that context is key. At the beginning of this vid, I presented a quote from Borderlands 2 that may have implied that I were some sort of conductor in this shit show of a topic, which is technically true. But it paints an entirely incomplete picture of the character the quote comes from. By taking this one quote out of context, it suppresses the meaning of what is being said. In following what we've learned from Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen's opening, it very nearly devalues the complexity of the entire character. Having the context that Krieg is wholly aware of his state of mind and hardly able to control the situation, yet still tries desperately to get the woman's attention. I'm the conductor of the poop train becomes less of an incomprehensible outburst and more so an exertion of his ability to communicate with her in the only way he's physically capable of. Similarly to Krieg, this vid is my desperate attempt to explain how the opening quote of Dragon's Dogma 2 isn't even a similarly introspective observation as Dark Arisen's, but rather setting a selfish expectation. The quote is essentially idolizing the image of a man to a comical degree for standard of expectation, no doubt hoping to inspire others to attain such greatness. This man, worthy of the primitive church, which exists no longer except in the pictures of the 16th century and in the pages of martyrology, was stamped with the dye of human greatness, which most nearly approaches the divine greatness through conviction. Conviction is human will attaining to its highest reach. They wanted the Arisen to become a very specific role of leadership, able to overcome the challenge and rule the land as sovereign, or rather shape them into becoming a powerful, eloquent god, or what have you. But this isn't the kind of story that appeals to me, or rather, the delivery doesn't appeal. There's a moment of mystery as we strive to uncover how we became a prisoner in the beginning of the game, until we're told everything the second we arrive in the city anyway, only introducing surface-level curiosities about the political state of things through a series of fetch quests that ultimately amount to nothing. And from then on, as I've beat to death already, our hand is held as we're guided completely through the story. I really wanted to like Dragon's Dogma 2. I was really excited for it. And I think I'm done talking about Dragon's Dogma on the main channel for a while. But if this vid gets 100 likes, I'll drop another GMV. Thank you to my monthly crew, Shay, Medium Fry, and Isakawa, and to everyone else who has supported my content so far. If you like listening to me talk a lot, I've been streaming on Twitch for the last few months. All of the VODs are up on my second channel, at Extra Spacenoid, or you can find me live Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at twitch.tv/Spacenoid. You can also get notifications for when I go live through your preferred platform, or over in our public Discord, where we chat about all sorts of things while I'm offline. I'll pin all of the links in the comments below. Next vid will be up next month, and I can't wait to take you on that journey. See ya.